to the Habitual Thinker. I've got another guest today, my guy Rich. We go back to our Verizon days. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, let him list off his accolades, and we'll just have a great conversation. We'll focus this around sales, but we'll let the conversation go wherever it needs to go. So thanks for coming to the show.
I appreciate you having me along. I'm Rich Madara. I'm the Senior Training and Enablement Specialist for Digital Velocity, which is a sub-business unit to a larger technology company called CDW.
Okay.
I've been working there for about 5 years now, but I've had a variety of roles in sales and operations and all kinds of things throughout the technology world over the last going on 13 years.
13 years. Time flies, dude.
It's amazing how fast it's been. So, started my technology journey in retail, doing technical support for customer service with people's cell phones and smartphones back in the day. I moved into a sales position with Verizon and then into a sales manager position after that.
Yeah.
After a couple of interesting events in my personal life, took me off of the sales floor for a while and allowed me to do a little bit of reflecting and thinking, and this was an injury that I had. No cool story behind it. We were just kind of cleaning up after my brother's wedding and I rolled my foot the wrong way. But
that's usually how those things work, right? They're never like an awesome story that you could.
No, it was after the wedding and after all of the fun stuff,
yeah.
Right? So I ended up breaking my foot off the sales floor for about 2.5, 3 months and surgery and all that. And it got me to reflect a little bit on what was important for me at that time. And I enjoyed technology, I enjoyed working with people, I enjoyed the whole sales motion aspect of the job, but what I couldn't deal with anymore was really the retail aspect of it. I fast forward through all that recovery and everything, and I landed a job with a Chicago-based company where I'm still currently working. And I started when they were looking for a sales instructor / coach. And I was unemployed at the time because I kind of dipped out of my previous role without a safety net. And
Yep.
my girlfriend's parents really didn't like that too much, But I was perusing through LinkedIn at the time in Starbucks, and I said I can do that job. So I submitted my application for it, and went through a couple rounds of interviews, and it was a good time. They came back to me and said, "We want to offer you the sales capability advisor role."
Oh, that sounds nice.
I'm an advisor, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was nice because it was one of the more senior training positions in that part of the organization, and it really kind of was for me the natural progression of my role, because while I liked sales and I liked the motion of sales and everything that went along with that, what I truly enjoyed most was the people development. I liked seeing my coworkers or the people that worked for me as a sales leader. I liked to see them succeed, and I liked really seeing that sort of light bulb moment go off. So I got to do that for about 5.5 years. I traveled all around the country and worked with sellers in Chicago and Dallas and Virginia and New York City, and just a ton of great experiences traveling before we hit this sort of pandemic situation. And then after that, my experience broadened even further, because then that was the catalyst to let me start working with people that I never would have had the opportunity to ever even meet before, never mind work with them or influence them or have a substantial impact on their life.
Yeah.
So then I picked up this new role. I saw there was an internal opportunity, and I picked up a new role for this sort of state-of-the-art, cutting-edge business unit called Digital Velocity, right? When you think about what Digital Velocity is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. That sounds
sexy,
futuristic,
right?
Very sexy.
It is.
You elaborate on what that even means.
Yeah, well, so what I think is kind of at the core of it, I want to start with the word velocity, right? Because velocity, people think, oh yeah, you're just really moving fast.
Yeah.
It's scientific definition of velocity is speed plus direction. So when you think about what we do within Digital Velocity, it's a business unit that focuses on providing customers speed and direction in their business.
Okay.
So, right, maybe you have a client who has some really smart folks that are able to, software engineers or developers, for example. They're just really brilliant people, and they can execute and produce software or produce products and results very, very quickly. But maybe there's a little bit of strategic direction that's lacking. right? Well, we can plug in the gaps in the strategic direction aspect of it. Okay, great. Well, what about the flip side of that? Maybe you have a business or a client who, they've got this beautiful vision in mind. They have this thing that they want to accomplish. They just don't have the resources. They don't have the bodies or the expertise or, somebody who can actually execute for them.
Yeah.
So we'll bring in, what we call elastic engineering or elastic bench, for example, or talent orchestration. We'll bring in people to do it.
So you're providing those resources to help them achieve said goal in whatever time period.
We're either bringing them an expert who can do it. We're advising. We're consulting. We'll create the actual product for the client, custom to their needs or whatever sort of bespoke requirements they have for it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because we get to talk about all those cool things like artificial intelligence, and machine learning, and DevOps has been something new that I've been. Well, it's not really that DevOps is new, but I've been learning about that a whole lot more since I picked up this role, and it's. There's a whole wide world out there beyond the PC that's in front of you. If you're a person who's in a corporate environment or a professional environment, there's a whole lot more to the world of technology that you don't even see or even may not even have a clue about. So it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
That's awesome. So it seems like you're having to do a lot of like pivoting and kind of thinking on the fly as you're working with different. Well, maybe you're working more with the salespeople, but when you're thinking about like what you're doing to service the client, every client's going to have all these different needs, and you have to say, okay, I have to assess this situation is different from the last one and figure out what pieces I need to pull, what resources I need to do. How do you manage that? Like some people feel like that's a lot, like they get overwhelmed. Like how are you managing that in your role?
Well, so my role right now is I'm not a customer-facing role in that way. So I'm more of the support role for those sellers, right? So where I sit right now is in between our sales force, right? You think about the engine of an organization, the growth engine of a business. It's the sellers. It's the people that are actually out there courting the customers and prospecting for new clients. That's driving the business to us. We're the execution and implementation arm of that.
Okay.
So we have pre-sales functions, we have our delivery functions, and we have our customer success functions after delivery of the product or the service. So where I really add the value to this, or where I help sort of manage that sales motion, is delivering the education to those sellers so they can then, what we like to say is spot food, right? What does food look like? And then how do we chase it down faster? Right? How do we close that business quicker? So for me, I found that my niche has been, I can kind of understand the techie talk that we get from these, again, really brilliant engineer and developer types. And I can take that and sort of synthesize that information and turn it around to a seller and say, okay, these are the words that you're going to need to use, which are going to make the difference for your client. Because we are not just talking, so this, and what I'm getting at is it's the outcome that we deliver. It's not about whatever type of technology happens to be running in the background. So when I teach my sellers, or I teach somebody new about what it means to be in sales or to be a consultant or to work for my organization, you have to begin with the end in mind. Or I think Simon Sinek says, start with why. Why does the client want?
Why do they want this technology? What is the outcome that they're trying to get?
And that's what I say is we're not actually, believe it or not, right? We move $25 billion worth of hardware and software a year, something to that effect. And I would say to myself, I'm like, believe it or not, we don't sell technology here, right? We solve business problems. We solve business challenges. It just so happens to be the media in which we solve it is via technology, right? So that's really sort of where I've kind of brought the technical end and the interest that I've had to the people interest, and seeing the success of my sellers. And I call them my sellers because I've probably trained and developed over the course of the last 5 years, a couple hundred people around the organization, And for me, that mentorship, the guidance, the leadership that I can bring them, and having those moments, where it really clicks for them.
Where it clicks for them,
That's the most, compelling thing for me. That's the most rewarding thing for me.
Yeah, awesome. So that's great. And thanks for explaining that and giving that overview. Because again, most people, if they hear that, they're like, oh, what is that sales velocity? But let's take it back, right? Where you are now, I always like to ask this question to people, like, when you're young, you have this idea of what you want to be when you get older, right? When you grow up.
Yeah.
How does Rich now differ from what Rich thought about what he wanted to be when he was a kid?
Miles away.
Okay, what was that? Give me a little.
Yeah. So growing up, my dad, right, firefighter, EMT, first responder, 30 years of doing that kind of stuff. And, you see what, your parents or somebody, a loved one, a family member that you kind of look up to what they're doing. And I was like, I'm a firefighter one day. That'd be cool, He was also a lineman for Connecticut Light and Power. It was CLMP.
That was my first internship at CLMP, right there in the Turnpike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I went with the nice checkered grass.
Yeah. I went for a job there too. I didn't get it, but I mean, I attempted to because I thought, hey, cool, it'd be cool.
That's hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
That was my first internship, and that's when I realized I wanted to be in sales. But we'll dig into that later. Go ahead. Carry on.
Well, so I thought, I'm like, oh yeah, I think it'd be cool to be a firefighter. Like, you're a kid, right? I mean, my cousins were riding our bikes around and stuff, and we're, pretending we're all fire trucks responding.
Putting out the fire.
I thought that's what I wanted to do, something to that effect, or all the other kid things, like, I want to be an astronaut or something.
I want to be an astronaut.
I have a fascination with astronomy, man, too. That's like a whole other side thing we could do. But I thought it was going to be something in one of those spaces. And then I actually got my first job as a teenager, and I was kind of encouraged to go to school by my aunt and my uncle.
What was your first job?
Grocery store. I was a
grocery store?
Yeah, cashier, grocery store.
I was a stock boy.
Yes.
Shout out to Edge of the Woods in New Haven.
One of my favorite things about that job, I could go out in the parking lot, pop in my iPod. It was when iPods were new, right? Yeah. Pop in my iPod, my headphones, and just push carts all day. Man. I'm out in the sun. I get some exercise. Got my tunes. How good could this job be? But that was also my first sort of foray into people leading, right? And I was not very good at it at the time. I was a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid who thought he knew everything. I was just like, I had a lot of learning to learn. So that, I got into the real world and started earning some money, and then I decided, I'm like, okay, well, firefighter is not really actually what I wanted to do. I thought it was cool because it was like what my dad did. So going through school and everything, I saw my uncle, he was a lawyer. My aunt had a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a doctorate, and she was a nurse and a nursing professor at Yale. And I'm like, wow, like there's like cool things out there. But what I found is that I had a way with people where, and this was a very rough, unpracticed, undeveloped sort of, way of selling ideas and pitching ideas to people that, would persuade them. So that's where, I said, I really like technology. I can't do this grocery store thing anymore. I'm the guy. I spent all this time at school, and they, I got my degree, and they got me like scrubbing the bottle room at 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I'm worth more than this, So found a job doing that technical support thing, and, I found out, well, hey, I'm good with the technology, and I'm good with the people. And not only can I solve the actual problem.
And that's not always easy to find. Somebody's good at technology and good with people.
Right. I mean, I'm sure you remember, the Flextronics days, right? That's where I got started, man, was troubleshooting, looking at accounts, and asking the questions to try to get to the root of the issue rather than just like slapping a Band-Aid over it. So, then I said, well, of course, you knew how that played out. The contract wasn't renewed, and I was losing my job after a year, and got brought into the sales world. And that's where I kind of found my groove. I was like, I can actually talk to people, and they'll listen to me. They're gonna pay attention to what I say. And I can make a ton of money doing it too.
Get paid to do it,
And it's with technology and all these cool things that I already love to mess around with. So it really, sales turned into sort of the obvious choice for me. I was good with the people, I was good with the technology, I was making money, I was living out on my own, and it was a really good ride for me. And that's kind of where I said, you know what, it's not going to be doing some, sort of like, lineman work or firefighter work. I'm not going to go work in a hospital. I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm going to work with people. And that's where I've been since.
So I guess throughout your life, what made you feel so comfortable like dealing with people? 'Cause that's a fear a lot of people have, right? Of like just talking to people, talking to strangers, asking them for the business, right? Like those are uncomfortable things for most people. Where do you think you got that ability or comfortability to be able to communicate with people and then, ask them for a sale?
That's a great question. A lot of it was, I think early in my career, I would say unearned confidence, just wildly unearned confidence.
Blind confidence, yeah.
Yeah, and I had no business being that confident in myself at the time either,
Wait a second. So like, why do you think that though?
Because, so when I reflect back on that and I look at all the ways that I screwed up or dropped the ball or made the wrong recommendation or, you know, whatever it was that it resulted in a less than desirable outcome, right? Oftentimes that was attributed to, right, the ego.
The ego.
It was, and it always came back to the ego for me. And that was something I had to spend a lot of time, by the way, working on that because, you know, feedback from coworkers, from leaders, from customers, and oftentimes, whatever, I'm the sales guy. Yeah. You came to me for help. I'm making buku bucks. You know, I'm one of the top performers here. Why are you going to try to tell me about what I'm? And I kind of recognize that as a blind spot for me at the time. So while I say that, you know, and don't get me wrong, all of those things were positive experiences in the end because you learn from those. Yeah. Right. They teach you something. They teach you what not to do. They teach you what worked and what you can repeat. But you know, there's a lot of stumbling, a lot of falling, a lot of you know, and ultimately a bruised ego on my part. But that, I think, after, you know, I kind of recognized that, wait a minute, I'm not all that. You know, you kind of have to dial it back a little. You dial it back a little bit, but then again, that also makes you better, right? And I think that for me, being able to sit back and reflect a little bit has become one of those skills that is, it's a non-starter if you don't have it, right? If you can't reflect on what you did or didn't do or what you could have done differently, you don't have that capacity, then
I believe your growth is stunted.
100%.
If you can't reflect and look at yourself, being self-aware, something I talk about all the time is being brutally honest with yourself and looking at yourself and say, hey, you that wasn't it, that wasn't right. You could have done better. You could have did this better. Oh yeah. You gotta be able to get that ego in check to even be able to do that. Because the ego wants, what are you talking about? You know who I am?
Me. Yeah. No, you can't act like that anymore. And you know, you're not doing yourself any favors, but you're also not doing any favors to the people around you because then you become this really toxic person. You're awful to work with.
And you don't even see it though.
You don't see it.
You think it's everybody else.
You think it's that sort of, it's not a me problem, it's a them problem, right? And it's funny you said that brutally honest thing. That's, oftentimes you'll see people who describe themselves, I'm just brutally honest. If you can't handle, no man, you're just brutal. Yeah. It's not that you're being honest about anything, you just like to be brutal. You like to be cruel, right? Yeah. So when you say, you know, being brutally honest with yourself, I kind of like to temper that too, because you have to be honest with yourself, but I don't necessarily think it has to be brutal, right? Because we all deserve a little bit of grace.
100%.
You know, 'cause I look back at all of those things where I screwed up or, you know, or I really dropped the ball or, you know, offended a customer or another coworker of mine or whatever, and I cringe. I still cringe really hard, but I'm like, you know what, man?
You got to give yourself, like you said, give yourself a little bit of grace.
But I'm still, I try to give myself a little bit of grace, but the reality of it is that's still something I'm working on, man. Yeah. I still, there's a lot of moments where I look back and it just pops, it's those intrusive thoughts. They pop back in your head. And you're just like, oh, I can't believe I said that to that client.
Can you remember like one or two times or whatever where you had a moment where it was like, I can remember one, I'll share a little later, but you have a moment that like was like, pivotal for you to like, I gotta maybe rethink the way I approach this, or maybe I could have done better.
Yeah, and so I have one of those moments, but the moment didn't really click for me until I was really far removed from it, right? For, like time-wise. I had a customer who'd come in, young gentleman, really good dude, right? He's a nice guy to talk to, and he had an older gentleman with him. And you know, reflecting back on, I didn't really kind of put the context clues together. He was like a caretaker, and the guy, the actual customer that I was working with, had some sort of a whether it was a learning disability or a developmental disability of some kind.
This is the customer.
The customer. But here's the thing, right? It was completely. You would never have been able to notice just from having a regular conversation. Yeah. You can't, you know, we're just talking and, you know, we want to get this phone and he wants to do this and that and the other thing. And I was pushing towards a particular flavor of devices.
Yeah.
And so this was one of those big overarching sort of lessons that I learned was it's not about me, it's about the
you.
client.
Yeah.
Get your ego out of the way, because I would have done so much better if I really wasn't so biased in the way
Yeah.
that I approached my sales motions. But so I was really, really pushing towards this thing, it's gonna be better. I did all the consultative stuff that we were taught,
You
right?
follow the
Ask
manual.
the questions
Yeah.
and, qualify.
You earned the right.
I earned the right. And I knew in my heart of hearts, at least I thought,
Yeah.
that, hey, I think you're gonna have a better experience with this product, right? I think you're gonna have the better experience with the product. But what I wasn't considering is what the customer was thinking and what the client was thinking. And it turned out that the gentleman that was with him was really the caretaker and the guy who was writing the checks
Yeah.
for the whole thing. And he came back afterwards. After we did the phone, like eventually we got the phone that he originally came in for, not the one that I was pushing for.
Yep.
And so he brought him back out to the car and he came back to me. He's like, Rich, I need to give you some feedback, right? You really were pushing really hard, right? And sometimes it's really important for you to listen to what the client wants, not for what you want. And that was the first time anybody had really been that direct with me.
Yeah.
At least not somebody who's like my manager.
Yeah. Somebody that has no dog in the fight, just giving you pure, honest feedback.
Yeah, because, and again, at the end of the day, this wasn't the guy who was using the device or who had the account in his name, or he simply wrote the check and he was looking out for this person with him. And, I just kind of brushed that off at the time. I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever you say, buddy. And now that I think back at that, I'm like, I should probably given that a little bit more credence at the time, and thought a little bit more clearly.
But you remembered it.
Oh God, I can't forget it.
Yeah,
you can't forget
and
it.
I'm sure I'd said it had an impact on the way you may handle your business going forward, or just being cognizant of opportunity to maybe do better in a situation.
Yeah, well, that's where I started. Not after that moment, but as I moved into this new role and I broke away from my previous role, I saw it as there's like a 3-month gap in between, right? So, I got to, work part-time for my buddy, do a little bit of self-reflecting and and that, the other thing. But that's when I kind of said to myself, I can reinvent who I am, right? I can be Rich version 2.0.
I like that.
And you're right, I can elevate the way that I approach working with people now. Because now it's not just, when I was the individual sales contributor, it was all about how does this benefit me?
Yeah.
But now, right, I'm looking at how do I elevate and lift up others in their roles? And that's where I started paying a lot more attention to emotional intelligence and EQ. And to me, EQ, if that's a skill that you don't possess, or you're not willing to work on it, that's a total non-starter for me, right? You and I, we're not going to jive. You're not going to, you're going to hold yourself back. I mean, the data already tells us that, folks with higher levels of EQ, have better job performance overall, especially in sales, especially in complex sales motions too, right? So the higher your emotional intelligence is, the better off you're going to be. Because at the end of the day, that is people knowledge, right? Because it's not just knowing yourself, it's also knowing, reading the context clues, it's knowing who's in front of you and how you might respond to something that I might say to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So EQ became a really critical skill for me in that way, because that's truly the way to persuade and to gain consensus and to gain allies or bring people over to your line of thinking.
Yeah.
Right? That emotional intelligence is just absolutely critical.
Yeah, no, that's powerful, and it's real. Like those are skills that you don't go to school for a lot. Well, at least back then they didn't go to school for. They didn't have sales degree when I was in college. But they do now. Like UConn has it now.
Oh, great.
But those are skill sets that make a huge difference in your success. Just in sales or the business world in general, like you're in training, like just any time where you're having to interact with people, whether it's within your organization, outside the organization, is super valuable. And I'm glad you highlighted that. I wanted to go back a little bit about just like those skills that you learned while being in that sales space. So people that aren't in sales, people that aren't in business, when they hear sales, they think of, the guy with the suit, right? You know, you say smells of cigarettes.
Yeah.
He's going in the office and
Good old
trying to
Johnny
trying to
car
get you
sales.
to add that warranty on your car, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what people think about sales and
Yeah.
don't realize all the skills and all the you know, not only just knowing your product, but also knowing people and having to balance that and also having to think on the fly because every person is different, right? What are some of those skill sets that you learned when you got into sales when you were at Verizon that you've pretty much taken with you to where you are now or just in life?
Yeah. So the first thing that I think about when you talk about sales, you're totally right. People think of Johnny car sales over here. Show me the car at the back of the lot.
Yeah.
Coffee breath and cigarette. All that stuff, right? And we've all worked with somebody who's like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We've worked with that person, and that is the kind of person who gives legitimate sell, and I'm using that word a little bit loosely, but right, people who are actually in it for the right reasons gives them a bad name, but if you think about it, right, you go back hundreds of years, the merchant class has always made the world go round, right? Whether you're talking about shipping spices from one country to another, or you've got all the cool fabrics laid out at the bazaar, or whatever that might look like. The merchant class always has made the world go round, and I'm a firm believer in that. And that's why when people come into when I would have folks join my new hire sales class, that's what I would tell them. I'm like, listen, you can make a preposterous amount of money doing this job. You can fail miserably doing this job, right? Whenever somebody says, "Oh, you're just a salesperson," what do you?
You're just a salesperson.
I'm just a salesperson. As I'm like wiping tears with $50 bills. You know what I mean? Like, so
Just a salesperson that just made a commission check that's you probably won't see for the next 4 or 5 months.
Right. Yeah. Right. This commission check I just made this month is probably half of your salary.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And that's how.
And not in a condescending way, but like people don't understand that, right? Like I don't want to be like, oh, look what you make, but like, because there's downsides to it, but I want people to understand.
Yes.
You can make whatever you want to make if you put the effort in.
Especially in the technology world, right? Because it's growing so rapidly. But that's the point is, as a seller, you're in control of your own destiny in most cases, right? You're really kind of running your own desk a lot of the times. But the skills that you learn as a seller are really transferable to any part of the world, all right? And I'm a firm believer of that too, because not only are you learning how to interact with people, you're learning how to ask questions, and you're learning how to ask questions to get the type of answer that you want.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the beautiful things. I love being sort of a wordsmith in that way.
Yeah.
Because you can say, hey, Fareed, what do you think about this building that we're in? Do you like it?
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Great. Well, okay, so that's an answer, but I can control how you answer too.
Yeah.
Right, Fareed, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think about the usefulness of this type of building? Right? I'm controlling the way that you're responding to me, and that's giving me a very specific piece of information. Right? So where it gets really interesting is, how do you start synthesizing that information to paint a bigger picture of that client's IT environment or that client's office environment, or you're painting a picture of what's going on around that person that's making them respond to me in the way that they are.
Yeah.
This is why I always tell my folks, listen, when you ask a question and that person is about to respond to you with an answer, you need to listen to understand.
Not to respond.
Thank you. Yes.
And it is hard to not do that. It's hard because especially if you have to make a sale. I'm like, all right, I need to get this information so I can, so like it's a very complex thing that's going on in your head.
Yeah.
But you're right. You need to listen
Yeah.
to understand fully what they're talking about so that you can have the appropriate response, not the response that you want to get.
Yes.
So that you can close the sale.
Oftentimes that means you need to slow down the sales motion, which is often in contradiction to what leaders want.
Yeah,
they want you to speed up.
Like I need these numbers by this time.
You know?
But you told me to speed up and slow down. What do you want me to do?
Well, so that's where I love this quote: "Hurry slowly." Right? You move slow to go fast. Right? Because if you're doing all the prep work properly in the beginning, you're going to have that nice smooth experience all the way through at the end. But again, what we're saying here is that some of these things that make for successful salespeople really fly in the face of what business leaders are looking for, because they're going to say to you, dude, oh, you got that $2 million deal, right? So you could have a range of deals. Somewhere, let's call a small deal 25 grand, right?
Yeah.
We'll just call that small. I know it's
all relative depending on.
That's a life-changing amount of money for a lot of folks, right?
Yeah.
But in the business world, right, $25,000 sales is pennies.
That's small, yeah.
Right? And then you got your big 7-figure or 8-figure deals even, right? Oftentimes, people will not push on those little $25,000, $50,000 deals, but they're gonna go real like full bore on the $7 million deal, like, oh, pressure, close. Like that's
the opposite.
Complete. You need kid gloves on that $7 million deal. You need to be, hey, are we doing
this or not?
Are
Like,
we doing
don't waste my
25G or not?
time.
Are you gonna write the check?
Exactly.
Like, let's move past this. Let's get to something more productive.
Yep.
I know I'm just giving you your Chromebooks or your printers here or whatever. Let's get on to something that's actually gonna make a difference for your business.
Yeah.
You know? So that's what I mean. It kind of flies in the face of what a lot of traditional business leaders want. They want to put the pressure on that big customer, on that big, let's close that. No, you're going to be more likely to create a trap for yourself or a pitfall that way.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you put the pressure on that one person who's leading the engagement, could generate the opposite result.
100%.
That's the way that I see that kind of stuff. But the skills that you get, generally speaking, from sales, whether it's talking to people, learning how to just communicate with people of different backgrounds, different parts of the country, right? Yeah, the diversity is not just in the way that we look, but it's in the way we think.
100% diversity of thought.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I know we're really going into all these different parts of the business world. Like when you hear things like DE&I, it blows my mind. And often I don't wade into the comment section of like LinkedIn or anything. Because it's
You can go down a rabbit hole. I'm more of I view things and I laugh. I take it for what it is. I don't get into that stuff.
But people look at DEI and they say, well, no, you didn't hire enough people of color. You didn't hire enough women. That's not the point, right? There's something called the wisdom of crowds, right? The wisdom of crowds is a real phenomenon, and it started out in, I think this is I'm really gonna butcher this story because I just looked it up not that long ago, but a couple hundred years ago in Europe somewhere, there was and it wasn't even that long ago, they did a study where they brought a whole bunch of people and said, hey, how much does that cow weigh? Oh, of course, right? The more people you bring in, the smaller your variance of responses is going to be, the closer to the mean you're going to tailor to. But what they ultimately found is that, you're going to have an outlier over here that says that thing's like 800 pounds. That one says it's 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're both wrong. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. What they found is that the aggregate of the crowd, as it got bigger, got more accurate.
Yeah.
Funny, because that's how statistics works.
Yeah, exactly.
The more diverse viewpoints that you bring in, or the more data points,
you'll get you more to the accurate.
Correct. You tend to skew closer to the mean the more data points you can actually uncover.
Yeah.
Right. So to say that diversity and equity and or DE&I in general is just a fad, or it's not effective.
Well, some people think
it's falling
that's what
out
it
of
is.
favor. Yeah.
Some people think that's what it is, and I think there's also people use these terms to for their own personal agendas. Exactly. But let's just do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
For one, just do the right thing by people, and also business studies show diverse companies make more money.
Oh, less burnout, lower attrition.
And you got diversity of thought.
Coworkers.
Somebody that comes from this part of the world.
Yeah.
Meshes with somebody from this part of the world. Now you got two different perspectives attacking an idea, as opposed to one way of thinking. When you're hiring everybody from maybe one school or one area, they all think the same way, right? So, and that's a whole different rabbit hole you can go down.
It is, but what I want to just kind of maybe kind of stick a pin in it there is that when you see the people that are saying, oh, well, DE&I is falling out of favor. Falling out of favor is not the same as ineffective or effective, right? Or valuable or invaluable, right? And you really need to parse those things out. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not a good business decision.
Facts.
Right? So,
yeah.
I guess we could do that. Right?
Well, yeah. So to kind of stay on the vein of those skills that you're talking about when it comes to sales and being able to ask questions. I don't know about you, but I get that a lot from maybe some of my friends, or even my wife sometimes. You ask a lot of questions, you get directs. That can be intimidating, right? And maybe it can, but from being in sales my whole career and just having this type of mindset, I'm a person that always wants to seek the truth. No matter how uncomfortable it is for me, or you, or anybody else in the room. Yeah. I value that more than I value, I guess, trying to be very soft with people. nowadays. And maybe it's different at work. You got to be a little bit more catering to the person you're trying to sell to. But even there, I want to be very direct and try to get the truth, because that's the only way we grow.
Sure.
Do you get some of that type of feedback from people around you, like family members or people you work with? Like, you're very direct, or you're trying to get people get uncomfortable with stuff like that sometimes.
Not as much as I used to.
Okay.
But I think that's a function of the practice that I've put in over the years, because in my role now, I'm working with VPs who have been in the business 25, 30, 35 years.
Yeah.
And then I'm also working with folks that are in their very first big boy, big girl job out of school. So I think
Wide range.
Right, a very wide range. And I think what that's done for me is kind of, like, I'm thinking about it as like a volume knob instead of just going, from 1 to 10. I've got some sort of integers in between that I can kind of make little stopping points for, that kind of dial it in a little bit more for that individual. I think what I found is actually kind of the opposite. It's, when you ask questions of somebody, right, you're taking an interest in them. And what's everybody's favorite word? It's their own name. Like, you're going to let me talk about myself and my interest in the thing. Hell yeah, I'm going to do it, because hopefully I'm going to hear something in there that's going to either let me connect with you or bond with you better. Maybe it's an organic thing where I'm actually, yeah, I like cars too. Let's talk shop.
Yeah.
And we become friends. I've actually had clients that I've been friends with outside of work because of that reason. We bonded on some other sort of a level, whether weightlifting or cars or games or whatever that might be. So I think it's kind of in my experience, it's been the opposite. But then again, earlier in my career, there's been those points where I'm pointed, I'm direct, or I'm asking a very direct question, and people are like, why are you asking me that?
Yeah.
Right, and so we teach to that too, right? Especially with like money. People are uncomfortable talking about money for some reason. And that's especially for folks that are, starting their very first professional job. They're kind of used to like the taboo of, you don't talk about other people's money. Well, when you're in B2B, you got to talk budget. If they don't have a budget established for this project, you're wasting.
You're wasting a lot of time. You need to suss that out really quickly.
Right.
And like, this sounds great. What's your budget? Oh, $25K. Yeah, you're trying to sell $1 million product. This is a waste. What are we doing?
Right. But it's not only that. It's like, do they even have like an approved budget for it? Like, is there going to somebody who's going to write that check for us? Yeah. So that's where you have to sort of break some of that discomfort and say, listen, let's rip this Band-Aid off right now. You're going to start talking about money. Yeah. Right? Because it's important. It's a really critical component of the steps that we're going to take in this.
And you tell them why, right? So you've got to find a way to make it not uncomfortable.
And that's where, again, it comes back to the questions that we ask. It's all about in the way that we frame things, right? And matters, not just in, the framing of the background behind us, right? Because that sets the stage for the conversation we're gonna have. Well, you do the same thing with the words that you use.
So we're gonna hug at some point?
You can if you want. But you set the stage for the framing of the question that you're about to ask. Hey, Fareed, so that I can best make sure that, I'm aligning to your business's needs. What's the budget for something like this? You put in that little
You
preface.
soften that blow a lot.
And the data tells us that, this works, right? Robert Cialdini told us about this when he started writing about persuasion, right? And this is where, you go back to, old school lizard brains, or, you go back to old school monkey brains, right? Ooh, you bring me meat, I give you sharp rock. Right? Yep. You go hunt with sharp rock, bring me meat, we trade, right? So it goes back that far into our, sort of primal instincts.
What's in it for me? We're humans. That's, we all want to know what's in it for us.
So that's where that sort of preemption comes into play, because what he found, he did a study where he would have, he would have a mark, and then he would have a person who's assisting him. And the person that's being studied is the mark. They're waiting in a room, ready to do this psychological study. And his partner comes in. They think he's part of the study too. And oh, hey, I got an extra can of Coke. Do you want one? Is that okay? And just that preemptive gift giving triggers something in our minds. Later on down the road, that person was more likely to respond to affirmatively to a request from that partner, the person that gave them the Coke. Right?
You got to give to get.
Precise, and that's the data tells us that's how it works, right? So that's a really important way that you frame things. I'm benefiting you in this way. I'm doing you a favor. Tell me what I need to know. And that's the power of asking questions.
Yeah.
You ask the right question, you tell them how you want it answered, or you put in the framework behind it of why you're asking that question. It makes it a lot easier to get the information. People aren't so, brick walled. I think that's the other part of it, right? So we're talking all about it from the seller's perspective.
Yeah.
Right? Me as that salesperson, what did it do for you? How did that? Well, what about the client?
Yeah.
Right. How many times have they been burned?
And most, for one, they may already have a preconceived notion, but I also think we have certain personality types will make this comfortable, right? Just us having a conversation, like certain people that work in different fields, like it's hard to get information out of them.
Yeah.
Like I can ask you a question and you can ramble on. You can probably ask me a question and we can ramble on, right? We find some comfort in talking like that. But what about those people that aren't like that? Well, maybe they would be introverts or people that don't feel comfortable. Like how do you make them feel more comfortable when you're having some kind of interaction?
That's funny. That's one of those things. I think if you and I kind of travel back into our seller days at our last job, we had that earn the right thing. Right?
Yeah.
What is it? It's your context clues, right? It's first and foremost, right? It's not that you have a customer or a client in front. You have a person in front of you.
Just a
right?
human.
Just
like you.
Let's level at that part first, right? So what are the things that people value and care about, right? Health, safety, shelter, love, friendship, family, fun, all of these things that make us, part of who we are. What can I, just from a visual perspective, is there something that I can dial in on?
Yeah.
Look at the sports team on your shirt,
yeah,
or the school that you went to, or the type of car.
Find some way to quickly get some rapport building going on. Yeah,
right.
And align with them.
Exactly, right. Aligning. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, I remember the first step now.
Align. Yeah. You gotta love those corporate sales buzzwords. You can't shake them. I sometimes I gotta tell myself to not use that kind of lingo, like while talking with my kid or something. You probably look at you sound like an idiot, dude. Talk normal. But then sometimes I overdo it just for fun.
Yeah. I actually had a group chat going on with my brother and sister-in-law and my girlfriend, a couple of other folks in it, and I had dropped in something in there about, did you consider the TCO on it, or total cost of ownership? And she was like, what the hell does TCO mean? I'm like,
can we circle back to that conversation that we had earlier?
Did you do an ROI analysis on this yet? No.
Yeah.
So, I think something we can harm ourselves by putting up that sort of that language barrier, like the jargon and stuff like that. Salespeople talk or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you can break it down to the fact that, listen, we're humans, we're people first. It just so happens to be that I'm in a position to help you. I'm going to try to uncover what that help looks like, if I can even accomplish it for you. And then I'm going to make a recommendation for you in a way that is beneficial to both of us, because it has to be a partnership.
Yeah.
Right? There's no two ways about it, right? There's a give and there's a take. And if you are the kind of a salesperson who's like, I'm doing this all for you, like I'm not making a dime off, then I think you're being
then they know you're BS.
You're full of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you
It is. You can.
But it's like you're full of it, and like people smell commission breath a mile away.
Commission breath. Yep.
Right. People smell that a mile away. So like, let's just level with that. I remember one time where we had the shift in our sales model where you used to be able to buy your phones on those 2-year contracts, right? Yep. I'm sure you recall this one all of the heartache that came along with this. Moving into that monthly payment. The thing is, the customers never really understood that iPhone is not $199. Years ago. Right? People are gonna be watching this and be like, "What do you mean a $200 iPhone?"
Yeah.
No.
And people was complaining about that price.
People were complaining about that. Right? This is $200.
Well, I'm buying 2 today.
So
200 plus 2 times 2 is 400.
This is the price.
I don't get a discount?
No. But then you had to tell them, okay, well, we're not really selling them at that 200. We're subsidizing that to you. You're banking.
But they don't care. When you're saying that, all they hear is more money you want me to spend. That's all they care.
So then we spent all that time drawing it out and be like, look, your bill is going to be the same. It's just it's a different line item. And but the thing is, people were so distrustful of that.
Yeah.
And that's because they had been burned by salespeople or other professionals that didn't have their best interests in mind. And again, that comes back to that point. You people smell commission breath a mile away.
Yep.
And if you're that seller who's being dishonest about it, you're not going to do anything. I had people that would come in and be like, I just want to swipe my card for the full $650. I don't want to add it to my bill. I don't want to pay monthly for it. I just want to. And I'd level with them and be like, listen, Fareed, I totally understand, man. It's for a function of convenience. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
let me level with you. If you do it that way, I'll help you. I'll still sell you the phone. I'll help you get it all set up. I'm not going to benefit from it at all.
Yeah.
If you do it 1 month on the monthly plan and then you pay it off,
You'll be helping me out a ton.
I get to eat dinner tonight, man.
Yeah.
You know, that's all. I get
And
to eat lunch.
and that makes you human. Like you said, just to go back to what you said, we're all just human.
It works.
100%.
9 times out of 10, people be like, oh, okay, I can. Hey, man, if it's all the same to you, 650 here, 650 here, it's all the same to you. Do you mind helping me out? Because I'm going to help you set everything up.
It won't be too much of an inconvenience for you. You're not going to spend any extra money, right? And I think people get uncomfortable asking it. I've had people be like, do you need, like, when do you need this? I'm like, it would help me if you get it in this month. They're like, nah, no problem, I'll sign it. You know, like, if you've built that connection, and again, you're giving value, you know, you're answering their questions, you're providing whatever service to them.
Yeah.
They're people as well. They're, you know.
Yeah.
I don't. Again, some people get uncomfortable about it. Over time, I've gotten, you know, used to just being very frank with people like that.
You do get more comfortable with it, but I think as long as you're being honest in your intention and saying, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, the outcome that you are driving towards looks like this. This is what success looks like for you. Okay, we can partner in that way. The selling doesn't happen as like, oh, here comes all the servers that you ordered, or, you know, all those laptops and, you know, whatever. That's not the selling part of it. The selling part of it is building the rapport and then, you know, guiding that client towards the outcome using the methods and the media that you have available to you. You're selling the idea. You're selling the outcome. You're not selling the product.
Whatever value they're getting from what, it's like, I remember somebody told me, like you go to Best Buy and somebody's selling you a TV and you don't care about the 31 gigahertz. You care about the fact that you like to watch Game of Thrones in very crisp color with the sound, right? That's what you're buying, the experience that you're getting from it. You know.
Right. Yeah. How good is my football game going to look on that?
Exactly.
That's what I.
And you wouldn't have learned that unless you had a conversation with them about what they like. And, you know,
so
things that matter to them.
If we extrapolate that out of, you know, that's the consumer world, right? You extrapolate that out into the business world. The businesses, like, think about cloud computing.
What's going to make your job? What's going to make you get a promotion?
Right. What makes me look like a hero? What makes my job?
There
look
you
better?
go.
But it's not only that. It's like, you know, you think about cloud computing for an example. People don't care if you're on the coworkers in the organization and the customers don't care if your e-commerce platform is hosted on Azure, AWS, or on Google. They don't care. Does your e-commerce platform let you add stuff to the cart and check out? Yes or no? Well, then if it's yes, then who cares about what's going on in the background? Is it delivering the outcome?
Yeah. Do you have the security, things you say like that?
And that's I think sort of where I've adopted the outcomes-based philosophy more than, you know, back in my previous years where it's like, hey, how can I make this deal the most lucrative for me? Right. And I think this is where, and this ties into a different part of business. Like, you're familiar with ESG, right?
ESG, environmental, social governance.
Yep. So there's a lot in the similar vein of like DE&I. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what those things mean and how that actually drives a business or the impact it has in a business. And I think it's really short-sighted if you're one of those people who really pushes against that kind of ESG stuff, or you're really short-sighted in the sense that these are the long-term story arcs that are happening with or without you. Right? This is the business, I can assure you, the business has accounted for the cost benefit analysis of these ESG
initiatives.
The initiatives or the parameters or whatever they're putting in place. I assure you, a business analyst looked at this. If it's going to cost them $1, there's going to be a return on that investment somewhere. And just because you don't like it doesn't mean
it's not happening.
Doesn't mean it's a good business or bad business decision. It's a likely good business decision. So, you know, the business outcomes are really, you have to think longer term. And this comes back to sales in the sense of, I can't worry about closing that, you know, little $25,000 sale in front of me now, because it's the relationship and the sum of all of those interactions are going to lead to that big deal at the end. And the big deal at the end is going to cut me a great commission check, but
change your career trajectory.
Change my career, and is equally as important, it's going to deliver the outcome that the client was looking for.
100%.
Right? And that's where that partnership comes into play. You're not selling the product or you're selling the idea of, here's the outcome you can have. Let me help you. Let me show you how it can be.
Teaching them how to buy and teaching them why they need to buy for whatever their business initiative is, right? As long as you can tie, you know, your product or your service to that VP's business initiative, then you have a very strong, you have a strong opportunity to close, right? It's not just about, again, like, oh, they need this product for this. No, you're attaching your, so you're turning your product or service into a solution for them to achieve their goals, essentially.
And what's interesting about, you know, right, in my world, the products and the services are all very technologically focused. The way technology has changed over the last 60 years is really fascinating, right? When you go back into the 60s and everything, you started getting these mainframes, right? It was the mainframe computer, which was then about taking things off of paper and, you know, starting.
How many people resisted that?
Right. Well, now as everything evolves, right, we move past digitizing and we move into automating things. So now we've, you know, automated this process and that process and the heat in this room and the lights turn on at this time, right? Technology is taking on a different role. Now that we're in the 2020s here, technology has evolved again. Now it's no longer about efficiency or cost savings. It's about uncovering new revenue streams for the client. It's about new ways of customer engagement, right? Because you can't just have engagement happening at the retail brick and mortar level. You can't just have the engagement happening on your e-commerce site. You need sort of that omnipresence, right? You need that omni-channel support. I need to text. I need to go on to, you know, the socials to reach my company. I can engage with them through the website. I can talk to
so many different avenues now that we didn't have.
Right, and this is where technology. So what's interesting is in 2020, there's a lot of research. I have to find the you know, the sources for this to cite them, but the research tells us that in 2020. Right, the customer experience overtook price and product as a leading brand differentiator. And we don't really need to look all that far to find that, right? I mean, you're wearing an Apple Watch. Well, okay, I can, you know, or using an iPhone, for example, great, that's a cool product. It does a lot of great things, but I could go to Best Buy and pick up a $200 Motorola phone that's going to do all those same things. Well, that's the thing, you're not paying for the camera, the microphone, the blah, 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 blah. You're paying for the experience that you get. And that's why people will spend $1,100, $1,200 on an Apple product, because they're gonna get the Apple experience. Right, so we've been seeing this trend happening already. People are willing to spend more for a better experience. I think nearly 6 in 10 clients have surveyed have said that they would leave their favorite brand in favor of another based on a poor customer experience. Right?
100%.
So, you know, again, when you're thinking about how this kind of dovetails into the world of sales, you are the face of that organization. Whether, you know, right, whether or not, you know, you are the chief operating officer, CEO of whatever, right? That seller is the face of the company. That seller is the company to the client. Right, and that's that sort of inflection point where it can be either a great experience or a really crappy experience, and you know, I think that's the challenge.
And I like the way you put that, as like, you know, that's one of the things that drew me to sales is like we kind of talked about, like the internship, like cool internship at CLMP, made good money, more than I would ever thought I would make at like 19 years old, however I was that summer. But I was sitting at a desk moving stuff around. Right, I've always had like some of an entrepreneur bug. You know, it's my family, and sales is like the most entrepreneurial type of role you can have, still working for a company, because you still got to kind of manage your own business. And then when you think about it like that, as opposed to me saying, oh, you're just a salesperson, right? The way you say things, words are important. Or you're the face of the business. You are the company, and you really are, because without the sales, nobody else in the company eats. Right? If there's no revenue coming in, no other department has a job. You don't have a job. And so I think a lot of people don't understand, if you're not in sales or in business, they don't understand how important a person is in sales. And people that do really well in sales, they write their own ticket.
Oh yeah.
You can't say anything. That was empowering to me. I remember one company I worked for, I'm not gonna say the name, but I just remember some of the more senior guys that were sellers. They didn't take nothing from their boss. Like in sales, your boss is not really your boss. It's just someone that helps you kind of hit your goals. But if you're selling, nobody can't tell you anything.
Yeah.
That was empowering to me.
See, that's interesting to me, because I I don't know if empowering is the word I would use for that, because if you think about where, all those horror stories of you got that super high producer, but they're such a toxic asshole all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to work with them.
Well,
I
100% understand that. Like, I wouldn't equate them being a jerk to being empowering. Just empowering to know that if you're putting in the work, you're producing, then you have a certain level of like pride in like who I am. Like, I don't have to change positions to like be the man. I'm the man. I'm a closer. I'm good at my job. As long as you're doing things in an ethical manner, treating people right. I think that's empowering, as opposed to like I gotta wait till somebody else leaves this role for me to move up, and then I get some sort of esteem within the company.
Sure. I think maybe I misunderstood you. I'm glad you said this, because the words we use do matter.
Yeah.
When you say that, nobody can really tell me anything if I'm that top producer.
Not saying like you shouldn't take feedback. No, not yet. So I get that. Maybe I might have said that.
No, but that's also really what a lot of people feel is, shit, what are you going to do? Fire me?
Well, you probably won't be a top producer for long, and people will get fired.
Yes.
You can stay a top producer as long as you're willing to stay curious and be open to feedback and learning, because what you did yesterday got you here. Yeah. You want to be there. You got to always be looking to do something different and be better.
Today's a different day than yesterday, right?
100%.
What worked yesterday may not be working today for you.
Exactly. So that was the point. So that for me, was like I always thought that was cool. Was just like, I can come in here. I don't have to be here for 20 years. If I can use my skill sets and make an impact, I'm going to get that esteem within the organization. I'm going to have that sense of like, I've done something. I don't have to wait for somebody to move out or somebody to retire to get that position. You can immediately have an impact if you're willing to work hard in sales.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about that, as sales managers. When you say like their boss, right? I typically think of a sales manager. I'm with you, man. I think a sales manager's role is to provide the tools to succeed and remove the barriers to success. And if you're a sales manager and you're not doing those things, you're doing yourself and your team and your organization a disservice. Right? Because
that's like the difference, like manager and leader.
Correct.
Right? The manager's the one that the leader's one like, okay, how do we make this? How do we make us win?
You manage processes. You lead people. That's the difference, right? You manage numbers and processes, right? But if you're a sales manager, right, or I always try to take that manager word out, unless if you're a people person, if you're a people leader, you're a people leader. You're not a manager. You know what I mean? But that should be the role of the sales leader, is removing the barriers to success and providing the tools to succeed. And they say that people don't leave their jobs, they leave their bosses. That's right. They leave their bosses.
So true.
Right? Because what people ultimately want in a career, and I think a recent survey said somewhere in the neighborhood of like 6 out of 10 people are looking for professional development in their career, right? As a really critical factor. That's not to say that like pay and schedule and benefits aren't important, but having that opportunity to, develop themselves is a really important part of a career. Nobody wants to be, that person that's just, stuck schlepping carts around the parking lot at minimum wage forever. That's not a path to happiness.
And one other thing, and I want to pivot a little bit more into the more personal stuff for you. You had said something about like asking questions, and it just made me think about like just the way I think, and a lot of people that I know that work in sales think. It's almost like you see plays, right? Like we were talking about this earlier, right? And that translates to anything in the world, right? If you said something about, there's somebody who's planned this out, and they saw that they make this move, this is going to give us this much revenue 10 years down the line. So my mind is always like that when I see anything that goes on in the world, outside of business, my personal life, right? I don't just take the information at face value. Okay, well, I want to understand, well, where did this information come from? Who's giving me this information? Why are they giving me this information? What is their motive, right? Can you speak to a little bit to like how you think about things that happen in the world from like using your sales brain of like always being curious?
Definitely. So I think where you should start with that is understanding that things do not happen in a vacuum, right? We were just talking about that book over there on that bookshelf, The Fifth Discipline. And that was something we read and used in our undergrad systems theory class, right? Because whether you want to believe it or not, or whether you want to participate in it or not, you are part of a system, right? And there are, certain guardrails in the system, either designed to help or hinder, depending on what the intention of the action is, right? So what I'm saying here is that your behaviors and your actions are not without consequence later on down the road. So when you think about how do we take all of these pieces of information and kind of synthesize them in together, you really have to think about, okay, where's the data coming from? What is the intent of that person who's providing the data? How is it collected? What are we going to do with it? What are the intended outcomes? What are some of the unintended outcomes that we might need to mitigate? Right? Those are two questions that you ask when you're developing AI large language models. Right? What's the intended outcome here? What are some unintended outcomes? You have to think about those two.
You have to.
Right?
You have to think about worst case scenarios.
Correct, right? So, when you're trying to synthesize that data, it's about zooming out and understanding the bigger picture, understanding the bigger picture of the system that you're operating within, right? If I'm operating in a sales function, well, my business acumen tells me the sales function is the engine of the business, but you also have financial aspects, you have marketing aspects, you have legal aspects, right? All of those things play into how can I talk about the product? Well, I can't talk about it in an illegal way or a misleading way. So I have to ask questions that are going to bring me to what's important to the client or to the business. Am I supporting all of the functions of all of these important stakeholders in the system, right? And then again, it's about the people. The reality of it is organizations themselves, right? Think of the biggest, baddest corporation that you can come up with. It is nothing more than a stack of paper. It's a series of charters and legal documents. It is the people being the and I'm stealing this. I hope I can share this with one of my professors from Central one day, because this was something I picked up in his course, and I keep coming back to it. It is the people being the business that make the business or the organization go, right? And it is that system of people and the system of charters and legal documents that are the business, right? Without one or the other, you either have a group of people or you have a group of papers.
100%. I like that. That's a really cool way to put that.
That was for you, Doc.
Yeah, real quick. So to pivot a little bit on there, I want to kind of dig into your personal life. Like, what are some of your hobbies, man? Like, what does a day in the life of Rich look like?
Oh man. Well, we have our very new coworker at home. We just adopted a puppy.
Okay.
So he's about 9 months
You're a dog
old.
dad? Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
A fur parent?
Fur parent, I guess.
I don't know.
Well, so I have a cat that I adopted about 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, which is amazing to me because she was a little kitten when I got her. But then I moved in with my partner Jen, and she brought her own cat. So we got our own little sort of blended family started that way. Then we adopted a puppy.
Okay.
We just bought our first house.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
This is your first time owning a home?
First time home ownership. Yeah, we are trial by fire.
Let me tell you one thing: don't overwhelm yourself. Don't try to fix everything at once. You're never going to be finished with the work you got to do in the house.
We when we bought the place, so it's funny. It came up available for sale on the 30th of December. We went and we saw it, the 29th. We went and we saw it on the 30th. We made an offer on the 31st, so New Year's Eve, and they accepted our offer on New Year's Day.
Wow, that was quick.
10 o'clock in the morning.
That was a quick process.
It was really quick. We gave them asking, we got it. We've got this cute little river in our backyard and everything. It's the best, man. It's so good. So we've got that going on. I started this role a year and a half ago, or about a year and 3/4 from now. Jen is doing a new role for herself as well. She's hopped across a couple of different functions, and she's doing well for herself. She just got her very first freelance gigs as a graphic designer, and she puts together some beautiful work. So
nice.
Yeah, so she's been doing great with that. But for me, I've picked up a new weightlifting routine. The effects of the pandemic have been a little obvious on me. So
will you say that like as in like a lot of people have done, just maybe not going out as much or having been in the house, so you're not as active? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, yeah, it's a combination of the fact that I'm now in a corporate work from home type of a role,
Gotcha.
a little more of a sedentary lifestyle than I prefer, but
the kitchen is close by. I know it.
Easy. I'll tell you what's been a real godsend though has been meal prepping. That's been a new habit that we've really built up over the last few months, and I'm sticking to it. So we got our meal prep 5 nights a week, which is good. But for me, it's 3 days a week. I'm getting up at 7 o'clock or 6:30 in the morning. I'm going out lifting. Lifting hard, lifting heavy, trying to get back into some some semblance of good shape of some kind. But I have the full-time position. I get to. What's nice about my home life and working from home, I can take my dog out and play in the middle of the day if I want. I want to go take a Dunkin' Donuts run. I can go take a Dunkin' Donuts run. But a lot of it is really like figuring out what does home life look like. How do I balance home ownership plus personal development plus professional development plus
juggling all these
so many places.
Adulthood, man.
So
it's
many
like,
places. It is
overrated.
overrated.
It's overrated, man. Like, why are we rushing to become grown?
Yeah, right. It's overrated. But I'm starting to kind of fall back into some hobbies that I kind of left off to the wayside for a while that I enjoy. I used to be a real big PC gamer back in the day. Medal of Honor was
Medal of Honor. Did you play Wolfenstein 3D?
I did. Oh, yeah.
Commander Keen.
Oh, dude, Command and Conquer. We played. I played them all.
Yeah.
Call of Duty. When it was World War II, before it got into stuff.
I was a big PC guy myself.
Yeah. So I've gotten back into that. Now, while I don't have a gaming computer, again, leveraging the world of technology, cloud computing is a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah.
I don't have to go out and spend $2,000.
Crazy how much has changed, man. Remember CompUSA? Remember that store?
I do.
I was a kid in the candy store there, man. And like now looking back, it's like they wouldn't have survived in it because you used to have to go there to go buy like Encyclopedia Britannica or the new Windows. You have to go pick up that. You remember that huge box?
Yeah.
You spend maybe a couple $100 on it. Now it's free. You just pay for the subscription. Man.
Yep. Oh, and that's an interesting business model too, by the way. I'm
the subscription model.
I am fascinated. Well, so I wrote a paper about this for one of my my strategic IT management courses, and it is the as a service wave, right? Everything.
SaaS.
Yep. Well, not just SaaS. It's
everything.
Insert whatever as you want as a service. So whether you're talking about desktop as a service, or we call it VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, and all that. Everything is moving away from that sort of. What we would call a legacy or traditional perpetual model, right? Like you said, I can't just go and pick up an Encyclopedia Britannica CD-ROM anymore and own that forever, right? You have a recurring licensing model where your license will expire if you choose to, no longer be part of the subscription. But funny enough, that is how I have started positioning myself as an employee of my business, right? So I interviewed for a position a while ago, and I laid out. I have a walking deck that I use, right? It's 4 slides. It's most of the times that I'm meeting new people, it's through Teams or WebEx or something like that, right? So in this interview, I have a walking deck, and I would say, here's a slide about the personal things of me. 4 or 5 bullet points, who I am, where I live, who's with me, a couple pictures, this, that, right? There's the people element. Flip the next page. Here's my professional background. Boom, 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 boom. Bullet points, accomplishments, education. Just again, it's PowerPoint, so you don't want like 1,000 words on that screen. Just the hard hitting stuff. Next page, business acumen. What do I bring to the table? And I break that up into 3 different sections. But this is where I'll drop that line like free. This page that you see right here. This is what you get with your monthly subscription to Rich Madara.
Gotcha.
Right?
I like that.
Because it's true, right? You have a monthly subscription to me.
Yeah, we can part ways at any time. It says that in the paperwork.
It does.
You can fire me, I can fire you.
But that's the way I start positioning myself. And I'll tell you what, man, people pay attention to that. Like,
that's awesome. I like that.
I got a real good laugh out of that from a guy recently. But it's true, right? I'm not here to be some sort of a cog in a machine.
Yeah.
You know, I'm here to deliver some real results for you. Here's how I'm going to do it. Here is my monthly subscription cost.
Yeah. There you go.
That's the salary I want.
I like that.
You know?
I like that. I might have to steal a piece of that.
By all means. So I learned from another manager something called CASE, right?
Yeah.
Capital CASE. Copy and steal everything.
I love that. Copy and steal everything.
Yeah.
Hey, we gotta reinvent the wheel, man. If something works,
Case it.
you know, case it.
Just case it.
I love it. I love it. You mentioned the work from home, man. Like we were talking about that earlier, man. I don't think I could ever go back.
Never.
Like what are some of your favorite takeaways from like the work from home life?
I am not spending time on the road anymore. It's the commute, man. I mean, that is the least valuable way I think anybody could ever spend their time driving out. There's only so much that you can take in, you know, listening to podcasts or audiobooks while you're driving. You know what I mean? And that time there has to be a better way to use it.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not only that. It's like, first of all, you know, if your average commute, I'm just going to make up an average because I don't really know what the average commute is, but like 45 minutes or something, or half an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're doing that back and forth. That's an hour a day or an hour and a half a day across 5 days of a work week. Or if you're in retail, sometimes 6 days.
Yep.
You know, that's a ton of time.
How many hours
You're not getting paid for it.
are you just driving?
You're not getting paid for it. It's not benefiting you anyway. It's not benefiting the business in any way.
Yep.
Right. You have a whole host of all sorts of measurable detractors for it. Right?
Yeah.
Stress and car accidents and you know.
You also got to factor in the time, like we kind of talked about. You got to factor in the time it takes. Well, for when you get less sleep, you got to wake up. You got to figure out what you're gonna wear.
Yeah.
That's a time that's a benefit for me.
Yes.
That I think is underrated of getting dressed. Get couple Zoom shirts, right? You know, you cycle through.
Yeah.
And you got depending if it's summer or winter, you got the shorts or the sweats.
That's it.
I don't gotta think, man. I'm just throwing my comfies.
Nobody see me shoulder or below.
Exactly. Just make sure you turn your camera off before you stand up. You know?
Yeah. I will tell you that one behavior that has changed is I am finely tuned to whether or not my microphone is muted or not now.
You got to screw up a couple of times to to make sure that's a priority for you, to make sure that that's a whole nother thing.
The
That's
screw up
hilarious.
is not, oh, Fareed, you're muted.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's when you're in that webinar with like 600, 700, 800 other people and you got that one person and like, can you mute yourself? If you're talking, can you mute?
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah. Silly.
Yeah, there's all blunders that, but I mean, I like when that happens. I had actually my last company. I had probably one of the worst like work from home blunders.
Really?
And the crazy thing was we still ended up closing the deal.
Oh,
but I'm presenting and I'm sharing the screen of what I'm supposed to be reading as opposed to what I'm supposed to be sharing with my client. So they're reading my sales script essentially. By far, probably like top 3 most embarrassing things in my career.
I believe it.
And I love it.
Yeah.
It's like you gotta be okay. Laugh at yourself and like what you learn from it. Well, now I'm never gonna screw that up again.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I'm curious then. How did
my manager is like,
how did the client?
He couldn't Slack me because my Slack is there. So he's just kind of on the way. It's like, Fareed, I think you're sharing the wrong part.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shoot.
So what was the client's perspective on that? Did they cut you a little slack or a little
The client didn't
grace?
say anything to me. There's a couple things that I could have done better on that whole interaction. That they gave the feedback to my manager at the time. And I'll be honest with you, I felt crappy.
Sure.
You know, you get over it.
Yeah.
Life goes on, and now looking back at it, it's a great story.
It is.
And I learned from it, and I actually didn't lose the sale. It possibly could have. I had a manager that helped keep it going, and you know, it wasn't like I messed up on like them, you know, the product that we were selling them, but it was a hell of a blunder.
Well,
and I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
No, but I think it kind of comes back to what we started with is like, you know, we're only human.
You're only human.
We're only human. And I say we're only human, but that's, you know, not only.
But I think it's when you say that because again, being very, you know, specific with our words, like we're not only human. That's what makes us special. Is that you do have like failing to succeed. You have to fail. Like, and when you can be okay with it and just, you know, laugh at yourself, right? Like see your imperfections and then just learn from it.
Yeah.
Like, what else are you gonna do? You're gonna beat yourself up over it and like get into like a bad loop of like, you know, getting down on yourself. Like we talked about, what's the end result? How does that serve you? No. It doesn't serve you at all. It just makes you more frustrated.
It's a waste of energy that could be better put. So this is what if I had a new seller coming in, like they'd be pissed. Oh, I had my first $100,000 six-figure opportunity and I dropped the ball. I'm like, okay, you have 24 hours to cry about it because now we're going to get back at it tomorrow.
Yeah. And what did you learn?
And you're going to win the next time around, right? What did you take away from it? That's got to be the key part is what's your takeaway?
Yeah.
We always say, what would you do differently if you could? And what went well?
And that brings me back, and I don't want to forget it, because that brings me back to a story that helped me like look at things differently. It was definitely a pivotal moment in my career. It was right when I was about to get promoted to a manager, and the day before, right, I had this customer. We still have the free phones, right?
Oh yeah.
What else can I give you besides free? Sold the guy a free phone. We had a decent interaction, nothing crazy, nothing bad. He writes an email to my my director, like a long email complaining about the whole interaction, right? This is the first day on my job. I'm walking into Glastonbury. I'm like, yep, manager, feeling great. And I'm sitting there talking to somebody. He's like, he wrote this letter. And the first thing, and this is an area that I had to work on and still some area for improvement for me. The first thing I got was defensive. Only thing he asked me is like, what could you have done differently? Nothing. I could, I did this, and I was arguably I could have been right? Sure. Like I don't think I did anything wrong in that situation. But he said, don't get defensive. I'm just asking you, what do you think you could have done differently? Yep. Again, nothing. He's like, Fareed, relax. Yeah. I'm not saying that you did anything wrong. I'm asking you to change the way you think. Yeah. And then it clicked. I was still heated in the moment, but I never forgot it throughout my whole career. And it was just a way to remember to say, you can always be better, right? Like, what could you have done differently? Own everything. Yeah. Own everything around you. If everything is your fault, when you think like everything is your fault, then that forces you to become better. But if you're always saying, oh, it was because that, then you don't give yourself any opportunity for growth. And I remember that. I was like, you know what? There's probably something I could have done differently. Maybe I could have explained it differently. Maybe I could have did this. And it stuck with me, right? And I think that was a pivotal moment for me, just to be like, kind of lose that ego a little bit. Yeah. Don't get so defensive. Yeah. Why am I mad? Am I mad because he's right? Right? Well, why am I mad? Just breathe, listen to the information. Is there some value to it? If there is, take it and move on.
So it's funny that you said that, because that defensive motion is so, right, that's such a natural
it's a natural trigger. Like
it really is.
It wasn't me.
Well, because that's what they tell us. The things that like trigger emotional pain are the same areas of the brain that activate for physical pain, right? So we know that there's a physiological response behind it, right? Yeah. When I hear something I don't like, that bruises my ego. That hurts a little bit.
That hurts.
Right? That's, dude, when you say something that hurts, you know? And that's not made up. But when you think about, I wish I had somebody who had asked me those questions, earlier on in my career. I really do. I wish I had that kind of support, because I didn't. Yeah. The kind of coaching that I received early in my career was, why didn't you do that? How come you didn't do that? Yeah. And well, this is less than helpful. Yeah. Okay. I read this really great book called Crucial Conversations. And there's a lot that goes into it when you start talking about the personas in certain interactions, right? You have people that will often frame themselves as the victim, or they'll frame that person as the asshole, and I'm the hero, and here's the right? So a good example of that is when you might be cruising down the highway, right? And you're doing your thing, you're kind of paying attention to the road in front of you, and all of a sudden you see this guy come right by and just cut you off, and you're like, holy shit, what a jerk. I can't believe, what is wrong with that? I hope he gets a flat tire down the road. All these intrusive thoughts start coming in. But the reality of it is, right, when you think about, and again, kind of bringing it back to people as people, we don't know what's happening in that situation.
You don't know what's going on there.
He might have his wife in the back of that car, ready to give birth any moment now, and he's rushing to get to the hospital. Yet we're over here thinking he's a jerk because he's like in and out of traffic, right? But because that's the thing, is we don't know the whole story all the time. We rarely
ever know the whole story.
Or we have a tiny
very small window from our vision.
Yeah, because again, it comes back to the fact that nothing operates in a vacuum. Everything else has a consequence or an impact on everything else around it. Even just the molecules that are coming in and out of our lungs as we're talking and breathing, it is pushing other molecules around into the other parts of the room. That is the same thing that happens when we're talking about having a customer interaction, or oh, that delivery engineer screwed up the interaction. Okay, well, it's not just limited to that part of the interaction. There's the intended consequences and the other unintended
butterfly
consequences.
effect.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to just call it the butterfly effect because I think it's a little like cliched. But,
Yeah.
even though that's what it's called, like that's a really good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Nothing operates in a vacuum. Everything is in a system.
Yeah.
And if you understand that, the actions that I take right now are going to have an impact on you, right? I have to think about what are those, what are the actions I'm going to take, so that way I have the most favorable outcome. Depending on what outcome I
at least have the
arrive at.
best intention behind it, right?
Well,
like at least try to do what you can do, from your perspective to try to have a positive impact on whatever action you're taking. And I 100%
Precisely, right? And that's where I love the study of EQ and emotional intelligence, because again, the data supports it. It is a valuable skill.
Yeah.
Right? They say that IQ is knowing how, but EQ is knowing who, or knowing you.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not just a function of understanding the social cues, but it's understanding how do I think about things? How do I react to things?
Yeah.
Right? And that's, I think, a really good example of that coaching example you got early on in your career.
And it's crazy, and like you said, you may not always take it that way in the moment, but if you don't forget it, it may serve you later on the line as you maybe mature or go through something. And at the moment, I'm like, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
But now I appreciate that, because I understood what he was trying to get me to see.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't see things like that, initially, but you still got to put it out there because, again, they may store in their subconscious till maybe someday down the line. It was like, ooh, I get that. Now it makes sense that, that epiphany moment may happen.
Yeah, our brains tell us weird stories too, right? This is why when we talk about sales, we don't talk about speeds and feeds, right? Customers don't care about how the thing works, right? They don't care about what's going on in the background.
Yeah.
They care about what the thing is going to do for them. So we don't talk facts and data with customers. Facts and data will get a customer to think about something. We want to drive action, right? Well, stories drive emotions. Emotions cause action. And this is why you hear about, there's that crime of passion, right? The guy or gal found their partner cheating on them, and they just saw red, they snapped, they couldn't control it. The emotions are driving the action, right? So when we tell stories are a great way to invoke emotion, and that is how we can move a sale along or drive action. Yeah. Because we're now saying, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I had another client in a very similar situation, and they didn't take action here, and it ended up costing them this, that,
and then they can paint that picture of what that may look like for them if they don't take action. This is why
you come back, and this is what Warren Berger calls a more beautiful question, right? You ask an impact question. What would happen if this were the case for you? Yeah. What would be the impact on you if that happened?
Yeah. Then you get them thinking like, oh, this.
Yeah,
I might need to do something.
Yeah, you can ask yes or no questions, right? You get a yes or a no out of a closed-ended question. Then you can ask your open-ended questions where, I'm going to pull more data or more information out of you because it's an open-ended question. But then you get your impact questions or your beautiful questions, right? Yeah. So it could be, hey, Fareed, are you going to go to the movies this weekend? Yes or no? Yeah, I'm gonna go. Cool. Hey, Fareed, tell me about one of the movies you want to go see this weekend. Oh yeah, new Thor, Love and Thunder is out. I want to go see this. Great. Fareed, what would happen if you went to the movies by yourself and you didn't offer to take the kids and give your wife the house for the day, give her a break? What would happen to you? Right. That's your impact question. Yeah. Because now you're getting that client to think, okay, well,
if I do this, I'll get this result. If I don't do this, I'll get this result.
It's the impact on me, right? That's why it's an impact question. What is the impact going to be on me?
It's funny you say that because that's what really compelled me to look into sales. Because when I was going to school or for my freshman year, both my brothers are engineers. That was go to be a computer engineer. I was like a nerd as a kid. I used to put the computers together. I thought that's what I wanted to do. I took a programming class and I figured out quickly this is not what I wanted to do.
Me too.
I wasn't gonna be a broke college student, so I sold everything. Right? There you go, I've been kicked off of eBay so many times. I was flipping sneakers, selling fake North Faces. Beyond that, but I got a job in college working for a timeshare alternative. It was similar. Okay. It was like a travel package, right?
Oh, okay.
But it's the same way they sell timeshares. Sure. And that had the biggest impact on me of saying I want to get into sales because.
How come?
That's all. It's all is emotional sale. I would see people come in, right? And they usually get enticed with you get a stay at a hotel in Vegas or, you know, 3 days, you got to go listen to another presentation, right?
Sure, yeah.
But you got to come in and listen to, you know, what we have. And, you know, so I see them come in. It's crazy. It could only be a couple could be invited or a single woman. This is what my sales manager told me. They'd come in. He used to be in Rocky Hill. The place got shut down. It was actually in a newspaper.
I'm already pissed off about this, but yeah, go ahead.
So they came in. They'd come in, and so my job, you know, I was still in college. It was a non-salary type of job. I would just take a piece of commission off of whatever the end sale was.
Okay.
So we'd sit in there. You know, I'd be the first face. You know, I'd ask them a couple questions, how you feel, kind of bringing that barrier down. I had like a whole list of questions. You know, ask them a little bit about travel and stuff like that, and you know, build a little bit of rapport, and then, you know, they start playing the music, and they say, okay, now you got to go into the presentation room. They go in the presentation room. I'd go in the back and be doing my schoolwork, right? Watching The Office. And I'm like, me and my roommate were like the youngest people there, right? This is my first real introduction to sales. And then, you know, you see the light go off. That means they're about to come out of the presentation. You go back, and then, you know, they come out and you ask them how things were, blah, 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 blah. And you have like a little questionnaire you ask them. And I would see people come out of there, and some people just come out and raise their hand. Because when they raise their hand, that means they want a manager to come over. They want to buy.
Oh yeah.
They would end up spending between like $6,000, $8,000 that night.
Wow.
When they came in to get a free gift,
and
they had the conversation in the car, so we're not going to buy anything.
Yeah.
That was powerful.
Sure.
That was powerful to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I seen some kind of like, you know, they're kind of getting pressured, but
wouldn't do it that way anymore. Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But it showed me like how powerful, like, you know, emotional sale, and like, because we sat through the presentation in the beginning so we could understand what they were listening to.
Yeah.
And the whole time it's like, you know, you're traveling. Can't you see yourself doing this? And you want to do this? They're paying pictures of like people's lifestyles without this vacation package and what it would be like with the vacation.
It's the art of the possible, man. Here's what's possible.
That was just it just blew my mind. And my job was we were too young. All I had to do was just talk to people, and I take 5% of that. Yeah. So when we were in college, I mean, I'm walking away with $400 a night. I was there maybe 4 nights a week. Sometimes I could walk away with like $1,200. This is back in like 2007, right? People used to think me and my roommate, like, you guys sell drugs? No, we work in sales. You know what I'm saying? So,
but that's the thing. So you're wiping your tears away with $50
exactly.
Bills,
we were buying Wii's. Remember the Nintendo Wii? We bought multiple Wii's. We were flipping them.
Oh man.
I used to sell everything. So that's always been kind of in my nature. But like that triggered a memory when you said about the stories. That is what really said, wow, I can see myself doing this. But I always wanted to make sure I was doing things in an ethical manner, and make sure I'm selling a product or service that's ethical, that can help people, not selling you magic beans.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no snake oil here. Well, what I think is also valuable about spending time in a sales profession, I really think there's a couple professions that anybody can benefit from.
Yeah.
One of those is working in a service industry of some kind. I don't care if you're in a restaurant, you work at a grocery store, you do something, right, where you are engaging with other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to help really kind of, I mean, I don't know if it will actually result in something, but I think it should be something that people consider, because it's a really good skill builder for that way, right? It kind of helps you build that empathy a little bit about what that server, that bartender, that grocery store clerk might be going through. But I think that is one part of the world that everybody should experience, and I think sales is another part of the world that everybody should experience a little bit. And I say that because sales skills carry over into all parts of your life,
100%.
Right? Whether it's just talking, to a person like you and I are right now.
Yeah.
I think about this one story where it's, just the fact that, I'm involved in sales and sales training.
Yeah.
Just the title was the differentiator for me. And so I think about this experience where my partner went to go get her vehicle repaired. And she was like, well, while it's repaired, let me go look around and see, would it make sense to, maybe trade it in for something else, or this or that, the other thing, right? And she went by herself. So this is why when you said, when they were doing the timeshare thing, it's like only couples or single women. It's like, well, because that's a very predatory practice.
It is.
In that way. It is. So and here, this example didn't happen, much more than like 2 or 3 years ago. Right. She was waiting for the thing to be fixed, and she's walking around the lot, and she was working with this guy, and he drew up a couple of how car sales are, they'll write down, they're like, not this, it's this, like, okay, I got it, get a good deal. Yeah. Sure, don't cross out the bad number, circle the good number.
Yep, the circling, a lot of circling of numbers.
Lots of circling, lots of scratching off. So she said he came back to her, showed her a couple of different vehicles out there, and came back to her some paperwork and said,
Yeah.
"What do you think about these? The same dollar amount that you're spending, paying per month now." I'm like, "Yeah, for 72 more months on a used vehicle when she's got maybe like 36 left at this current price." So she says to him, she says, "Okay, great. Well, thank you for all this. I want to have my boyfriend take a quick look at it for me, you know, and then I'll let you know." And the sales guy goes, "Oh, cool. What does your boyfriend do?" And she stops and looks at him and goes, "He's a sales instructor for a major tech company."
Yeah.
And she said the guy's face just drained.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well,
well,
she's on me. She's on to me.
you're like, you ain't getting that. And that when she said that to me, like his face went white.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's how you know he's trying to hose you.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you know, I can play the game. I can talk the talk. I always hold that. Like whenever I'm going to go buy a new car or something, or if I'm going to go to a point where there's some of that consultative sort of approach, I always hold that in my back pocket because it's like, it's funny. I was thinking about this business ethics class that I took back in the day. And one of the first questions that we started our semester with was, is it ethical to bluff in business? And wow, what a conversation that was, right? So what does bluffing look like?
Yeah, I mean, how do you define that?
Yeah, and bluffing is either, you know, withholding information or providing information that may be incorrect, right? So, I mean, we've already, you know, kind of crossed some ethical bounds at that point.
Yeah.
You know, but that's what I do. I'm not going to tell you what I do until you ask me.
Yeah.
Because I want to see how you operate.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to try to sell me on something, people don't want to be sold.
Yeah.
Right? People do not want to be sold. Right? If you're going to try to sell me on something, I'm going to sniff it out right away.
Yeah.
And then, here comes that Uno reverse card. I'm a sales instructor. I know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm on you. I'm on you.
You know, but then again, on the other side of that, I remember buying a laptop from a guy in Best Buy, and you know, you learn to recognize skills in others too when they're doing it right.
I enjoy that. Like that makes me want to buy from people.
I told this guy, I'm like, dude, if you were looking for a new job, I would have hired you right away because I went to the laptop. He asked me what I need it for, how am I going to use it, what else is important to you, do you need any of these you know, accessories or features to go with it? And then he gets to this point of sale and he goes, so as far as a warranty, would you like the 5, the 3, or the 1 year warranty? I was like,
gave you the options. Yeah.
I'm like, I'll take the 0 year warranty, but that was a great question. It was a great question, you know, the way he framed that, because he's asking the question and he's telling you to answer it in the way he wants you to answer.
He's driving you to you're making a decision, but either one of those decisions is going to get the result that he wants.
We call that the illusion of choice. Yeah. Right. The choice.
But that's really what that translates to everything that we deal with. It does. You know. Yeah. You know, as I was watching this, I forget who it was. I don't know if it was like Andrew Tate or somebody. He was like, you should really think about when you go throughout your day, like who's taking your money. I never thought about these. So why is Starbucks taking my money?
Sure. More importantly,
I'm giving it to them. No, they're actually taking it because you don't understand that there's a lot of like planning behind marketing and why you associate, you know, like Kleenex. Like you don't say tissue, you say I need a Kleenex.
Yeah.
That's brand. That brand recognition is so strong, right?
100%.
So this is the way salespeople are almost like, if you've been in sales for a while, you probably think a little bit like this because you've seen how the business you made, companies you worked for, you got the inside scoop on like, okay, what we're trying to accomplish, and how we're going to roll this out, how we're going to, you know, go to market, how we're going to attract customers, you know. So then you start to see, okay, well, if this works, then other companies work like this. Well, that means everything works like this because
it does.
There's no kind of like transaction that happens where somebody's not getting some sort of compensation.
Yeah, I agree, but I mean, I don't necessarily think that just because things are transactional or things are designed in such a way that we're constantly marketed to, I don't think that's 100% negative because...
I'm not saying it's negative, I'm just saying acknowledge it.
Certainly, worthwhile to acknowledge, and I think that there's some things where we put up those defenses naturally because we are so used to being marketed to, we're used to being kind of bent over.
Skeptical.
Very much skeptical, right? And but sometimes, you know, you've got that person who is like, no, this thing is really going to change your life. But we're just, no, man, I got my blind, I don't want none of that.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
So you're thinking of it as in like understand that and then being closed-minded to it.
Right.
Like putting up like a defense.
Yeah. So I don't have an issue with people making money, right, and making a living, because what else we're certainly not what we're meant to do as the organisms on the planet that we are, but it is the situation in which we find ourselves.
We need to pay our bills.
Right. So we should be playing out in the fields, picking 100%. Berries and living by the river, but yet we have checking accounts and credit scores instead.
Like, who told us to grow up, dude? Like, I think about it all the time. Like, all I had to worry about was just like playing outside until the streetlights came on.
It's so funny because I'm approaching 40 now, and I still don't feel like I'm an adult. I feel like a barely passable adult.
Bro, it's like I feel like I'm passing off as like I'm supposed to be an adult, but I sometimes feel like I'm still a kid. Like, I have kids. I'm like, who allowed me to like be in charge of other humans?
Yeah, who let me buy a house?
Right?
What? But I think.
But that's also a full circle moment for like our parents and adults that we like. They were just trying to figure this out as well, but we saw it from our perspective. It's like, oh, those are big humans and they know what they're doing. No,
nobody knows.
There's no manual.
Nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just trying to figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
That's how it all is now.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you hopping on. Before we go, man, I always like to ask a question around like, habits, because this is the habitual thinker.
Sure.
What are some habits that you have in place or that you may have recognized that you had to remove to, like you talked about becoming rich 2.0, reaching your higher self? What are some habits that you have in place that maybe are helping you get there or that have gotten you there? What habits maybe that you identify that you need to remove, and how have you gone about that?
That's a good question. The habits that I have introduced into my software here are really around the continuous improvement. So am I making time to improve the way I practice, right? Or practice the way I practice. And again, I'm kind of reaching back to what I learned from Doc back at CCSU, right? Is, practice is really what makes permanent. It's not what makes perfect, right? Because if you practice something the wrong way, you're going to get it perfectly wrong. Right? So practice makes permanent in that way. I'm always looking for ways to continually improve the way I engage on a human level. I'm always looking for ways to improve the way, like, just to do something better, more efficiently, right? So I'm habitually curious, right? I think having a little bit of that intellectual curiosity about the way things work is a really great habit to sort of ingrain. Just, go learn something new every day. Right? Just go learn something new, right? YouTube is a wonderful teacher.
Got on a rabbit hole, man. YouTube University.
I'm telling you, I learned to change car brakes and how to cook a steak properly there. And
I'm like, if you can't at least one of, like, you want to do something, at least check YouTube and see if you can do something first. Like,
So as far as habits go, I'm always looking for that way to just, what is the next thing I can add to my repertoire, add to my tool belt that's going to help me in another situation, right? And that part of that means that I need to habitually practice, and I need to make sure that I am habitually curious, right? And these are just things that after a while, they become automatic.
They become part of who you are. You almost like feel weird if you're not doing these things.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things I can always say is, just ask why. What's the why behind the what, right? And if you are in the constant habit of asking why things are, you'll piss off a couple of people because they just don't want to deal with it. But you're going to be enriching yourself.
You piss people off no matter what you do.
It does. Yeah, exactly. But more importantly, you're going to be enriching yourself. And when you understand why something is the way it is, it oftentimes makes the what a little bit more palatable or a little bit easier to deal with. So I hope that's
that's great. Is there any habits that you have identified that you needed to stop, or that was inhibiting you from becoming your high self?
Any habits? Yeah, okay. I was going to kind of go back to, some sort of software bugs that I had going on up here, and we kind of touched on this earlier, is that I would listen to respond, not listen to understand. And, you know, talking about that when you're working with a client or, you know, anybody, right? Even think about how you can translate this into, you know, a conversation with your significant other.
Yeah.
You know, right? It's very easy to get into emotional conversation with them, and all of a sudden you're thinking about, well, as soon as they're done talking, I'm going to come back at them
hit them
with
with this
this.
one.
I'm going to hit them with this. It's going to knock them out, you know? And that's not a productive way to, you know, enhance a relationship or to live with another person. So the habit that I had to really get out of was listening to respond, and the habit I had to build was listening to understand. And I think the whole world could do a lot better
100%.
if everybody did just a little bit more of those two things.
Yeah. I was always told you have 2 ears and 1 mouth so you can live talk.
I love it. Yes, yes, I love it.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. I mean, we could probably do this for another couple hours. We have to do it again for sure.
Oh, I would love to. This is so much fun.
But I appreciate you coming on. You know, check us out on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Hit the subscribe, like, drop a comment. If you love it, share it. If you hate it, keep scrolling. No love lost. But we're done. Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you so
All right.
much.